He's something else.
Are you kidding? Getting him up that early?
Everybody has to change their habits. We do have a Gadita tonight too. The truth is, I really want to go backtrack a little bit to Ayin Zayin and Aleph, because I learned something. I am to learn something in Bavli, in Shabbos in Bavli, over the week yesterday, which changed my whole view of this Yerushalmi here. A ritva about this Yerushalmi here. Let's just do the Gemara again. Mak shiur Mishkan. This is standard Gemara. We've had already many times. We commented when we had it Thursday night. This we've had already many times in the Yerushalmi. Mak shiur Mishkan. What kind of shiur was there in the Mishkan? They used to tie down the cables which held the curtains in place. Lo l'shoy, so asked the Gemara, was it not temporary? Rabbi Yosef became since they would travel and park based on God's say-so. So every time they planted themselves would be permanent, because they wouldn't know, maybe they wouldn't travel for another 19 years like they had in Kodesh. So that was considered permanent. Rabbi Yosef Rabun says, Mikavon, since since God promised to take them into Eretz Yisrael, they took them to Eretz Yisrael, was considered temporary. Now, I always thought, there's several other times we had this Gemara, that the Yerushalmi ends with a question, which we don't know why you require permanence, right? In fact, Yerushalmi assumes, like the Bavli, you require permanence, but we don't know what that permanence is. Well, now I know better. The Ritva says in Masechta Shabbos, and in the beginning of Perek Abona, the 12th Perek, he says, the Yerushalmi does not require Miskayim in any Malach on Shabbos. In fact, the Rambam paskins that way. The Rashi there, in the beginning of Perek Abona, paskins the conventional way, that a Malach has to be Miskayemes, meaning it's got to be permanent. If you make a knot, if you build something, it's got to be a permanent knot, it's got to be a permanent building. The Ritva brings down that the Yerushalmi doesn't hold that way. The Yerushalmi holds as long as the knot or the building will last until Shabbos is over, that's sufficient. You're already chayiv. And the Rambam, doubtless on the basis of the Yerushalmi, paskins that way. The Rambam paskins, if you do any malacha, and the malacha will be for permanent, not permanent, but it will stand the day of Shabbos until Shabbos is over, that you're chayiv.
So your permanent was 19 years. It lasted 19 years, so it wasn't temporary.
No, the Gemara rejects that. Gemara says, since they were imminently on the verge of going to Eretz Yisrael, so there was no permanence in the Midbar. And therefore, Malacha does not have to be permanent on Shabbos. So therefore, the degree of Miskayim which is necessary in order to be Chayiv on Shabbos is not the degree of Miskayim of permanence, like the Rashi learns it, absolute permanence, or permanence for a year or 10 years or whatever, but rather permanence just means that it will last until Shabbos is over. That's it. Last for the day, and that's sufficient. Okay? So had I not seen that Ritva, I would not have understood that, but I happen to have seen that Ritva, and that's in fact is clearly what the Yerushalmi holds. Okay? Once we started there, let's continue from there. Alright, Pinchas says, they learned. How do we know the concept of tying? The people used to sew the curtains in the Beis HaMikdash. From there they learned nifsak. If a thread snapped, toyakosh, they would tie it. Chazav nifsak. If it snapped again, lasos ksharim yefshar. It's not possible. It's not right to make two knots because it becomes obvious, right? The weave is imperfect. Rather, el chayzer matas rishon. You undo the first one, and you somehow splice together. So Yerushalmi is about to say, you undo the first knot, you splice together the ends. Rabbi Chizkiah said, Hayin chayta umna. That's what we say. An expert tailor, mavla train resha, he splices the ends together. It's called invisible weaving, when you're able to weave stuff together without having knots. So that's how they used to do it if they used to have two knots. Right, one knot they could stand, two knots they couldn't do, but in the case of two knots they would splice. Haida Amarda, where do we learn this out from? Dam Rabbi Yetzer China Merga Rios Lomdu. We learn this out for the people who wove the Rios. Again, it's a repetition. That's where we learn out the malach of kosher. Matam. How do we know that they have to that they have to splice? Because it says Orech Hayriya Achas, the length of one curtain. Now we dash not ha'achas to mean that you have to splice and not tie two knots in one place. Kadei should take kulo achas. It's all got to look as one. No, it's got to look uniform and nice. So if two knots come together, it doesn't look nice. That's why nifsak, if you had one rip or a kosher, right, then you would tie it. Became a shemagia orig when you would reach a weave, have a shor le'umayalo, he would undo it and push it in. Now it's not clear exactly what they're going on. I think it's going in a case where there are two knots and the Yerushalmi is just repeating itself, and it's saying that if there are two knots, then you would undo one and splice it into whatever's next to it. Rabbi Tanchuma b'Shem Ravuna said, "Afilu erev sheba, even in the erev." Now a weave has two parts: the warp and the woof, right? The erev is I was getting mixed up. Which is the Erev? I think the Erev is the one which is on the loom. The one which is on the loom, they're thinner threads, and they're much easier to snap. The one which you throw back and forth across the loom, right? The shuttle, it's a thicker thread. Because it has to, you throw it. So you throw it, has to be stronger. So there, it's much more it's much less likely to break and snap. So there, it's not such a big chiddush that there are no knots or ties or splices in that, because it doesn't break so easily. But the erev, meaning the stuff on the loom, it's very thin thread. So since it's thinner thread, it's much likelier to snap. So therefore, the Yerushalmi says even the erev, even that which is on the loom, it never snapped. Okay, it still remained. It'll always look uniform. Lo ebakeshav lo tiyomas. He argues the previous morning, says they never had any knots. They never had any tiyomas, means like a double thread. In other words, that I guess was stuck together and looked funny. Tana Rabbi Yeshua. We learned Rabbi Yeshua said chosu shel tamarim. If you have, we have this in the Bavli too. If you have a wrapper around a fruit or vegetables made out of date branches, upamaya shel tamarim, the same thing. Ptilia shel tamarim, the same thing. If you have a basket full of dates, korea umati, you can rip it open on Shabbos. Uvad shel ikshu, as long as you don't tie it again, because if you tie it again, we're afraid that the knot will be a kesher shel kayama. It'll be a permanent knot. Okay, there are other knots which are not chayiv on them. And they are not like the knot made by a camel driver, the knot made by a ship's captain, such as, for example, kosheres isha miftachei chaluk. A woman can tie the openings to her robe. Right, they didn't have buttons in the old days, right? I mean, they did, but not all the time. So she used to have ties on the front of her robe, so she could tie and untie those. She had a belt which held her tichel down, so she's allowed to tie that belt. Rutzuos mina, allowed to tie her shoe straps. Sandal or your sandal straps. We're allowed to tie your containers of wine and oil clothes. Ukter Shabbos, they used to have a leather top they used to tie on a meat pot. But you could even tie a knot on your barn to prevent your animal from leaving, or on the opening to your corral, to prevent your animal from leaving the pen on Shabbos. In order it shouldn't go out. Koshin Tliba Piskia, when it's allowed to tie a bucket for a well with a belt, now with the rope. The reason I now to use a rope is according to Chachamim, because we're afraid you're going to leave the rope there. You're going to be mavato the rope, because ropes are made to hold up buckets, right? So you're going to leave it there, and the knot which you tied on Shabbos will end up being a kesher shokayom, a permanent knot. So therefore, we don't let you use ropes. Rabbi says it's permissible. Klam Rabbi said general principle. Kol kesher she'enu shokayoma, a knot which is not a permanent knot, ein chayav in love. There is no chiyav. There's no issa d'oraisa in making a non-knot. Rabbi Chizkiah said, b'maftech imra. It says even talking about the opening of the seam, shumadbiko lechaluk, which connects it to the robe. That is a very big chiddush. She's saying. The truth is that she really draw it. Let's see if I can. I have paper here. What are credit card receipts good for if not for drawing pictures? It's a useless piece of paper in existence. Here you have. Here's a robe. Oops. Okay, there's the robe. Here's the opening in front. Now, the way it was made is that there were two knots. There was a knot which knotted. Here's, let's say, a hole and another hole, a hole and another hole. Okay. So what would happen is that you would have a string which would come through from the back of the garment to the front over here, and another string coming through from the back of the garment to the front over here, and you would tie it there. And the same thing with the bottom hole, right? But there was another knot in here which held the string in place in the hole inside the garment. Is that clear? Yeah, this string in place. But if I have a string coming out of my shirt, so to tie it to the other side, I would need a knot inside the shirt to hold the string out so it doesn't slip out, and I need another knot to tie it across, right? So what he's saying is, it's pashut. You can tie and untie the knot which holds it across. That's pashut. You can even undo the knot right which holds it inside the shirt. You can. That's his chiddush. That's his saying. Right. I might say that's what it's saying here. That you might say that's a kesher shel kayoma. Chiddush is that it's derech to take it out from time to time, and therefore it's not a kesher shel kayoma. It's a very big chiddush. That's what I'm saying. It is a very big chiddush. Okay, but that's what the Yerushalmi is saying. Even at the knot, which is the opening to the seam, shumadbiko lecholuk, which connects the string to the shirt, even that one she's allowed to do and undo. Rabbi Yosef said, "B'mafteh choluk shasui kamin shtei dapim." Now this is talking about a case where the garment is made in two sections. In other words, shnei dapim means here, two parts here and there. So therefore, she's frequently tying and untying it. So therefore, the rationale is that she's going to. It's never considered permanent knot. That's why she's allowed to do it, undo it. Okay. Says more further. Nishbitu ritus mino b'sanda. If your shoelaces or your sandal laces came out, noitel mouse, you can take them, put it back. As long as you don't make the permanent knot. Now again, this is the knot which is holding the lace to the sandal, right? We only have one lace. We only have one knot in our shoelaces, but they had another knot to hold it in place. So that knot you're not allowed to make, because that knot is a permanent knot. Okay, there it's not. There when they take it off, they never take off that knot, and therefore you're not allowed to make that on Shabbos. Have chodmo shenishmat. Now, what if the in the sandal? You know, we had this back in the Bavli, but this is the sole of the sandal, and here you have the thing which holds the strings in place, right? And you put the strings through here and tie them in the middle, right? So what happens if this chotem comes out? This thing is called the chotem. Literally means a nose, but here it protrudes from the sole of the sandal. So what if that comes out? Can you put it back? So it seems like you can put them back if they come out. So chod mashnishmat is tani mutar la'achzir. Those who said you can't put it back. Is tani. Those who said also la'achzir, you can't put it back. I'm boiling maybe the one say mandamar mutar. One that says you're allowed to put it back, when it's got one hole, but not this hole. So when there's one hole here on the bottom, this goes into one hole in the base of the shoe. Okay, there's one hole which holds this in place. Is that clear? It's like a slot, right? One slot. So to put it back in one slot, that's okay. Why is that one slot? Because it seems like there it's not even when it's in, it's not fixed because it's easy to pull in and out. Mandamar also, he said, now I don't know how it looked when it had a double slot, but somehow there was in a case where there's two slots going through, so then it's much more permanent, and therefore now have to put it back on Shabbos. Okay? Again, I don't know the scenario because I don't know what kind of sandal we're talking about, but somehow the one slot of one is okay, the two slot of one is also. Okay? So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yisrael Bereibun, Rabbi Yisrael said, Bein zeh, it's okay. Like the pin which holds that it has two holes, it's still mutter. Okay, even if it has two slots, it's still mutter. Mal kadun. So what's the difference between the two brises? The one which says mutter, one which says aser. Madam Moti says you're allowed to put back the chotem. Is berufin when you put it back and it's easily removable. Literally means soft. Mandamar of aser, it says aser, it's ba'afutim when they're tightly squeezed in, and then of course it's aser because that becomes permanent. So even though there's no knot, if it's tightly squeezed into the slot, so then it's also no matter how many slots there are, one or two, makes no difference. Okay? Ask Gemara, ma chok and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, to the argument of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Now, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, you recall, said in the Mishnah, and one is allowed to tie the opening to a pen or a corral on Shabbos. Now, this is a pretty big. The reason why this is a chiddush because you actually are tying a rope onto the ground, not the ground directly, but onto a fence which is mechuber lakarka. So it's a much bigger chiddush to allow that because that might be considered become part and parcel of the ground, and it might be somehow to load a bonnet. Right, because you're really building into the ground a barrier. So that's a big chiddush b'matirin. At least be also the rabbanon. That's what the Gemara asks. The Chachamim argue Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So we might have taught for that what you learned. Now this the Girsa is messed up here. If you look at the Pnei Moshe, the second line from the bottom brings down the proper Girsa. Pnei Moshe on the outer side of the page, the small print. No, the small print. The second line from the bottom. Modim Chachamim Meir. You see, this was the second line towards the end. Modim Chachamim Meir. Do you have it? Yeah. All right, just listen. Yeah, it is very small print. Modim Chachamim Meir. Chachamim can see the point to Meir. B'chotomos shebekarka, when you have seals in the ground. Shemefak bekin, you're allowed to loosen them, which are ropes connected to the ground. You're allowed to loosen them. Umatirin umafkin, and you're allowed to sever them. And mafkin means break apart the strands. Avalo chotchim, you're not allowed to cut them. Now that's on Yotif. Ubeshabbos, on Shabbos fakim, you're allowed to loosen umatir and undo. Avalo mafkin, but you're not allowed to loosen the strands, below chotchim, and you're not allowed to cut. Shebet kelim, if the ropes are attached to vessels, b'Shabbos matir, on Shabbos you're allowed to untie. It goes without saying that you're allowed to do that on Yontif. Now that's going back to the Gemara. Hadar Mara is the top now of 155 of Ayin Ches, the second line. Hadar Mara. This teaches us Ein Choker Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. You don't want them to argue with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Obviously they argue because they're machmir on Shabbos. They said on Shabbos you can't literally you can't cut or loosen cut or loosen the strands on the rope. Now from this we learn that a rope which is mechuber l'karka, chachamim are machmir. They said you can't loosen it. They said you can untie it, but you can't cut it, nor can you loosen the strands. Says the Gemara, hey, like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov can even tie a rope onto the ground. You can certainly do anything you want in order to get off the ground, literally off the fence or off whatever it's connected to. So it must be Rabbanan arguing Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. They have to argue, because if they don't argue, how can they have all these chumras? If you're only allowed to tie a rope which is lying on the ground onto a fence or a post on Shabbos, So by definition, you should be allowed to untie it or undo it or do anything you want with it. If we see limitations to how you're allowed to untie it or undo it, it must be that you're not allowed to place it there, and that Chachamim argue with Ben Yaakov. So it's actually be to me, I think we're saying, Adam Ra in Choker Ben Yaakov. You want to say that they don't argue with Ben Yaakov? They must argue with Ben Yaakov. Says one, no. Rabbi Ba said, B'chevel shachulu mas nisin. Rabbi Ben Yaakov never allowed you to put the rope up on Shabbos to begin with. He said it's already through a slot. Right? Shachul means threaded, or like a needle, like when you thread a needle, means it's already threaded into a slot. Then he said, B'chevel shumashucha, you're allowed to tie it, but not allowed to take one from scratch and put it into a hole in the ground. So it's a very interesting halacha. You can't take I don't know if the Bavli brings this down even. You're not allowed to take a rope which is lying on the ground and put it into a post or fence and tie that post or fence, tie an opening shut on Shabbos, because it looks like you're making a kesher shokayoma. Looks like you're building. So therefore, all you're allowed to do is if it's already threaded through a slot, you're allowed to tie it. And that's why also the limitations vice versa. When you come to undo it, you're allowed to untie it. You're allowed to loosen it, but you're not allowed to cut it, nor are you allowed to break apart the strands of the rope, because that looks too much like mekalka. Okay? Says one further, Piski, I have a little bit chevel. It says when you fix a bucket, you're allowed to fix it with a belt, but you're not allowed to fix it with a rope. Rabbi Yehuda Matir, Rabbi Yehuda says it's permissible. Ha Rabbanan Ralo, sounds like Rabbanan are not Matir this. So how could this be? Rabbanan are generally more mekel than Rabbi Yehuda. So it says more. It really Rabbanan hold the same way. El begin the Tina Karmais of Rabbi Yehuda. Since the beginning we mentioned Rabbi Yehuda. Tina of Hada b'Shem Rabbi Yehuda. Year two we said the same name Rabbi Yehuda, but really Rabbanan agree to it as well. That you're only allowed to tie. Oh, Rabbanan more machmir. I'm sorry, Rabbanan more machmir, and Rabbanan certainly should only allow you to use a belt. Now the truth is the Bavli holds. Bavli in this sugya says Rabbanan don't require you to use a belt. They allow you to use a rope. Bavli is the whole cheshbon why Rabbanan would not machmir in this case. But according to Yerushalmi says no. If Rabbi Yehuda is machmir, then also Rabbanan are going to be machmir. If Rabbi Yehuda holds you're only allowed to use a belt to fix your bucket, because if you use a rope, we're afraid you're going to lose the rope. You leave the rope there. So certainly Rabbanan hold the same way. So why it's only say Rabbi Yehuda says use a belt, not Rabbanan? So says Yerushalmi. Since the beginning, the Mishnah said that's Rabbi Yehuda. We mentioned this name Rabbi Yehuda as well. Rabbi Yehuda said general principle. Any knot which is not permanent, ain't chayavin alav, not chayav for it. Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Zira said, Kinimas, this is what our Mishnah is meant to say. And not just that it's not permanent, but you intend only to leave it there temporarily. You need chumrah. It's not enough that it's not a permanent knot. It also has got to be that you're only going to leave it there temporarily. And chayav and love, you're not chayav on it. Okay?
That's what you just quoted.
Yes. I tried to stall till you got here, because I had a very important thing to say at the beginning, and you missed it. Tell them what we said. The Rambam passed away. The written what? We're under the impression that that's Chumah de Rabbanan in the Bavli. But the Yerushalmi holds that Yerushalmi which we had so many times already about it, that since they were going to Eretz Yisrael, it was always considered temporary. So the Ritva says that the Yerushalmi meets the Pascha Loch Lamaisa, you're chayiv d'oraisa on Malacha, even if it's only for that Shabbos. Boner, kosher, any of those malachos, even if the permanence is defined only for that Shabbos alone, so that's sufficient to be mechayiv you. And the Rambam Paschals that way, based on the Yerushalmi. That Miskayim is only the Shaito. Miskayim is even for that Shabbos. And the truth is that this what Dr. Fidel just pointed out, that this Yerushalmi is really referring back to that. It says, it's got to be L'shah. Because even if it's a temporary night, if it's going to last to the end of Shabbos, then you're transgressive d'oraisa. So it's got to be a knot, which by definition is not made to last to the end of Shabbos. It's a fascinating thing, because L'chori would have to untie your shoes before Shabbos ends. or your tie.
Bendel for the Glila.
The bendel for the taka people are machmir on that, not the tie mincha. Yeah, mincha and Shabbos afternoon, which would be like the Yerushalmi. But I don't know. I don't know. Now I think about it. I mean, according to Yerushalmi, how can the chayyur have to untie your shoe before Shabbos ends? They have to tie it very loose. So the Yerushalmi obviously all wear slip-ons.
That's right.
That's why.
That's a Chassidim wear slip-ons. Yeah. Not just, a lot of people wear slip-ons on Shabbos for that reason. But you see, I mean, they did wear tied shoes on Shabbos because they're talking about if the lace came out. Yeah, there are people talking machmir not to tie ties on Shabbos. Yeah, a lot of people leave their ties tied from before Shabbos. But obviously, we hold that if it's a kesher which is not made, I'm being facetious. The Yerushalmi would tell us you have to untie the knot before Shabbos ends. Such a tremendous chiddush, a mind-boggling chiddush. The Yerushalmi would hold that you have to untie a knot before Shabbos. Then the Yerushalmi should mention it. So it means really, when the Yerushalmi says that if it's miskayim for Shabbos, it's a malacha. It must mean that if the intent was to make something to last all that time, or alternately, like you said before, the intent is to make it last for 24 hours. One of those two things. So it's you intended to make something which is going to transcend Shabbos, or intended to make something which is going to transcend 24 hours. There must be something along those lines, because otherwise, Yerushalmi would have told us you have to untie your shoes before Shabbos. And of course, it's not. It doesn't say anything of that sort. The Kabbalah is okay. When it's allowed to fold garments, I feel even 4 or 5 times. It's not considered to be ironing, and that's okay. Or Motzinas Amitos, when it's allowed to make one's beds. Milele Shabbos Shabbos, from Friday night for Shabbos morning. Avalom Shabbos Motzei Shabbos, was now allowed to make beds from Shabbos. Preparation for Motzei Shabbos. That's Isra V'Achona. Was allowed to fold garments and make beds. Yom Kippur l'Shabbos. Yom Kippur comes out on Friday. Allowed to do it in honor of Shabbos, which is going to come out on Saturday. And vice versa. If Shabbos comes out on Shabbos and Yom Kippur comes out on Sunday, so then Chelvei Shabbos, the leftover fats from the korbanos are sacrificed on Shabbos, craving Yom Kippur can be sacrificed Yom Kippur. Akiva Omer, no. Lo shel Shabbos kreim Yom Kippurim, lo shel Yom Kippurim kreim Shabbos. They are similar kedusha Shabbos Yom Kippur, and therefore one cannot sacrifice korbanos of Shabbos Yom Kippur nor of Yom Kippur on Shabbos. The Veis Rabbi Yanai Amri, the house Rabbi Yanai, they said kippur b'shnayim aser. For 2 people to fold the garment together is aser. Why? Because that's much more effective in taking out the creases. And taking out the creases on Shabbos looks like misakin, like fixing the garment. So therefore that's aser. So 2 people couldn't fold the tablecloth on Shabbos.
So it's not a concept of yochel.
No, it's only the Rabbanan. It's mersik and misakin. What? You're not supposed to fold it back on the same creases. Not supposed to. Because that's like ironing. That's not. It's not stated explicitly in our Gemara, but that's what you're not supposed to fold on the same crease. Right, you're supposed to. That's why a lot of people don't fold their talis till after Shabbos is over. Okay, Rabbi Chaim Shem Rav Shul Bar Nachman said, "Ein mekablim Shabbos." Shnayim was not allowed to fold with 2 people on Shabbos, like we just mentioned. And Ahindim Kapos of so if you spread something out on a bench and you fold like that, commanding the train. It's like 2 people. So it's to smooth it on a bench and fold it is the same Isser. Okay? Rabbi Chagai b'Shem Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman said, amazing Gemara. Ready for this one, guys? It's what's coming tonight just for this Gemara. Rabbi Chagai b'Shem Rabbi Shmuel said, what? B'Shem Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman said, Lo nitnu Shabbos is Yontayim elu la'achilo u'shtiya. The others are to have Shabbos is to eat and drink. So why? How you allowed to learn Torah on Shabbos? It's a bit to la'achila. How you allowed to learn Torah? So he says, since if you were eating and drinking all day, your mouth would be repugnant So therefore, they're matir to learn Torah on Shabbos.
This ties with Yerushalmi had the other person, the moral wanted to have 2 mouths.
2 mouths, right. This is a similar idea. That's a Reb Shimon Bar Yochai actually. And now there's a different gears here. The Kikar La'oden brings down the Kikar La'oden brings out a gears here from Sefer Chassidim that said not Sha'idei Shapeh Masriach, but Sha'idei Shapeh Tariach, meaning that a person learns all week, so it's difficult for Tariach means a custom. Means a person learns all week, it's difficult for him to refrain from learning on Shabbos. Of course, we would not have this problem. But in days without Tanuim and Amalei, they were so used to learning, so you take them away from learning, how can they refrain from learning? So therefore, they were matir them to learn on Shabbos. But it's preferable to eat and drink. Rabbi Brechia, B'Shem Rabbi Chia Bar Abba said, he argues. Fundamental machlokas here. He says, Lo nitnu Shabbos yom tovim, elo lasuk b'hem divrei Torah. The Shabbos was given to learn Torah. Masnisa Messiah, bein l'dain, bein l'dain. We have a brisa, which is a riot for either one of them. Ketzarose. What does it say in the brisa? This in the Bavli and Psachim. O Yoshev Ochel, O Yeshibosi with the Torah. You do either one or the other. Right? That's Rabbi Eliezer's Shita in Psachim. That O Lashem, O Lachem. Either or. Right? Because one pasuk says Shabbos Hu Lashem, it's a Shabbos for God. Because of Echroimer, Atzeres Lashem Elokecha. That's a time mistake, I think. Yeah. The Carbonata says, I just glossed over it. Carbonata says, one pasuk says it's for God, and one pasuk says it's for you, right?
Atzeres here refers to Shabbos.
Atzeres refers to Shavuos. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's the same thing, okay? So one way of reconciling it, this but Yerushalmi is a bit cryptic. But one way of reconciling it is the way the Yerushalmi said, either or. Either you eat, drink, and make merry the whole day, or you learn all day. Either or, right? There's another pshat, which is with pshat for that. That's Rabbi Eliezer in the Bavli. The other pshat is Rabbi Shua's pshat. Okay, it's how do you reconcile two? Divide in half. Learn half the day and eat and drink the other half of the day. Amri Abo said Shabbos Lashem. Another drush. What does Shabbos Lashem mean? Shvos Kashem. Rest like Hashem did. What Hashem rests from? Ma'akash Baruch Hu Shavas. What Hashem rests from? Mimaimer. The rest of the week he was talking, right? He made the heavens and earth by Dibur, right? So Shabbos he stopped talking. So you should stop talking on Shabbos, and two understandings there. One is that you shouldn't talk Sichas Chulin, you shouldn't talk Dvarim B'Teilim. The other is that you shouldn't talk about things which have to do with after Shabbos, because of Achor. And that ties into the next Gemara. Ma'aser b'Chassid Erez, a certain pious individuals brought down the Bible as well. Sheyatzel Atil b'Karmel Shabbos, he went out to walk in his vineyard on Shabbos. V'Roa Sham Pirta, and he saw the breach in the wall. V'Chashav l'Godro, and he had in mind to make a fence on it. Motzoi Shabbos, summer after Shabbos over, he said, since I thought to make a fence around it, I'm not going to make a fence on it at all. In other words, since I thought about it on Shabbos, he didn't even talk, he thought. But he was more machmir on himself. Ma polo Kosh Baruch Hu, what Hashem do for him? Ziman lo sukkah. He brought for him there a branch. Sukkah in Aramaic means a branch. He brought for him a branch achas shel nitzba of a caper tree. V'olas l'socha, and it grew in that breach. V'god dartoah, and fenced off his vineyard. And Mimena, from that caper tree, he himself ate. Mimena, his pious community made a living, kol yom of his entire life. Rabbi Chanina said, Midoichak, Only with great difficulty, Tira they matter Lishol Shalom Shabbos is to greet other people on Shabbos. Why? Because it's unnecessary. Instead, you should be, according to the one version, learning. According to the other version, be stuffing food into your face. But no, it didn't say sleep. It said eat and drink. It didn't say sleep. So the bottom line is that it was very difficult to be matter even greeting people on Shabbos. Amazing Gemara. When he saw his mother talking too much, have a Omar La, he said to her, Ima, Shuvsai, Mom, it's Shabbos. On Shabbos I can't talk too much. Okay? Tani, we learned. One is not allowed to make requests on Shabbos. Ask the Gemara, Rabbi Zir Shar B'chia Barba Mao Mema Ro'enu Parnaseinu. Can you say the fourth bracha on bench? Right, because in the fourth bracha on bench he mentions Reinu of how does it say? You all know, but it says Reinu is the name Parnaseinu. It says Parnaseinu there. It says Parnaseinu there.
The question is, what does the Dave Topal mean?
No. It says Ugmalanu Gomleinu Gomleinu Lai. V'cheinu Ches Rachem Ereva Atzola Atzloch Abrachav Yishua Nechma Parnasa V'chal Kolah. Don't say Parnaseinu. Rachman Farseinu B'Chavor. You think about Rachman Farseinu B'Chavor. That's what he was asking on. He was asking the fourth bracha. The truth is, as you all know, the Gra wouldn't say the Rachmans on Shabbos, because that's Taka asking. His shiur was on the fourth bracha. Can you say the fourth bracha? Right? And at that he answered him. Amar Leitz, he said, Toifus brachas kachu. That's the standard form of a bracha. That's the heter. The heter is a standard for a bracha you're allowed to make even though it has requests in it. Is it in Rachim? They took it out of the art scroll. It's a plot. No, it's in Rachim, not in... okay, so it's not the fourth bracha. Okay, my mistake. I apologize. Okay. Sham Luvagadnu. So he wasn't asking about the fourth bracha. He was asking about the third bracha, about Rachim. So the Shayat, can you say that on Shabbos? So it says Amar Leitz, he said Toifus brachas kachu. Yes, because that's the standard nusach. In other words, you don't change the standard nusach of brachas on Shabbos. And the truth is, that's really why we say Lokai Netzor. Lokai Netzor, right, has all those things are requests. Although I guess maybe I can say they're not parnasa requests. So maybe they're not the same. What? None of them are. So scratch that. But, bad example. But so the question, just ignore that comment. So the question is about benching. So he says benching we're mati because that's the standard bracha, and they didn't tap with the bracha just because it's Shabbos. Now, again, as I mentioned, that's only the brachas part, right? That's why the Gra wouldn't say the rachmans, which are not part and parcel of the brachas. Okay? Tani, we learned medichin koises, one is allowed to rinse cups, v'ka'achais, and plates, v'tamchuim, and pots, or not pots, tureens, because they're not for cooking, but rather for serving. Milele Shabbos l'shachris, from Friday night to use Shabbos morning, v'shachris l'chatzos, from Shabbos morning to use in the afternoon, michatzos from the early afternoon, mincha for late afternoon. But to wash your vessels from mincha and on is also, why is that? Because it's achona, right? You're preparing, right? Uvakosos, however, cups you're allowed to rinse even after showers shuras, because you ain't kfal. There's no set times for drinking, so they might always be necessary. Okay, Rabbi Yirmiyah, famous Gemara from several places in Shas, not really relevant here, but once we start talking about rinsing cups and plates. Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Chia Barashi said, Isha pikachas, a wise woman, medicha kaiskan, she washes her cup in one corner of the house, karakan, a plate in another corner of the house, tamchui kan, a tureen in another corner of the house. Nimtzes Mrabetz, it's based on Shabbos. That way, she tamps down the dirt in her house on Shabbos, even though it's also to tamp directly, because this is sort of Ashvui Kubos, but here you do it indirectly, and that's okay. Rabbi Zir B'Shem Rav Chisda said, Yom Kippurim Shechali is typo here, it should be Erev Shabbos. Yom Kippur comes out on Friday, ain't talking, we don't blow shofar. In the old days, when Shabbos began, they used to blow shofar. So here you don't blow. Similarly, if Yom Kippur comes out on Sunday, you don't make Havdalah Motzei Shabbos. Says Mak Rabbi Akiva, Sadik Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva holds Yom Kippur and Shabbos are the same Kedusha. So it must be that there's no distinction between them. So this must be going like Rabbi Akiva. That's why there's no blowing of shofar before, nor Havdalah afterwards, where Yom Kippur either precedes or follows Shabbos. Says Gemara, no. Barank Rabbi Shmuel Mavdil. However, like Rabbi Shmuel, you would make Havdalah from, at least you should make Havdalah from after Shabbos to Yom Kippur. Why? Because Yom Kippur there's a kula. What's a kula? Shekain Chavli, Shabbos came Yom Kippur. You can sacrifice the remaining making blowing shofar. The Shami asks why not make Havdalah at the end. But you're right, the shofar we wouldn't blow. Okay? So Naaman says, no. I'm Rabbi Ezer, Kumi Rabbi Mon, I feel like Rabbi Shmuel lo Yavdil. A very brilliant svara. He says, even like Shmuel, you're not going to make Havdalah. Why? Why did you want to make Havdalah? The reason to make Havdalah is to say that which was also yesterday is mutter today. If you had to sacrifice the fats of Shabbos on Shabbos, Shema and mutters are not permissible. In other words, the fats you were allowed to sacrifice on Shabbos. You continue to be mutter to do it on Yom Kippur, but you're allowed to do it on Shabbos itself because it's Shabbos' korbanos, the ones which are Deichel Shabbos. So therefore, there's no point in making Havdalah. Havdalah is something which was also yesterday, mutter today. But the fats, since they're the fats or korbanos sacrificed on Shabbos, so therefore they're mutter to sacrifice on Shabbos. They continue to be mutter the next day. So for that you don't make Havdalah. Okay? It's not being matters.
The next day is Yom Kippur?
Huh? It's just continuation of yesterday's heter. Yes, you're right. It's a special kula in Yom Kippur, he says, but it's not a distinction from the day before. Because you were sacrificing these fats yesterday, you continue to sacrifice them today. So there was no point in making Havdalah. Now, Amr Rabbi Shmuel said, Achoy Rabrech.
The same things that were also.
No, so that's the thing. Amr Shmuel Achoy Rabrech v'yavdu should make Havdalah. Shekachu motel hadia kvashim shlokas. We learned in the Bavli. I think it was the Bavli. Maybe it was Yerushalmi. I don't remember right. That when it's allowed to rinse, I think it was Yerushalmi. When it's allowed to, no, maybe, I don't remember. When it's allowed to rinse vegetables at Yom Kippur towards nightfall. We had two pshatim. One pshat was that it wasn't the Bavli. Rashi's pshat is because it makes you fast worse. Because you feel more akmas nefesh. Because here you are rinsing your vegetables, you can't eat them. There was another pshat of showing that it was chazal or mekel on this in order to diminish the severity of the fast on you, because you can look forward to eating that evening. But be that as it may, you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. On Shabbos, that's achona, and Chazal didn't permit that. Only Yom Kippur. So make Havdalah in order to accent the difference that you're allowed to prepare vegetables and fruits as Yom Kippur is ebbing away from Motzei Yom Kippur, which you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Rabbi Yisrael says, when are you going to make Havdalah? When is he allowed to start rinsing this? It's the next day, so you're going to make Havdalah Motzei Shabbos for what's mutter for you the next afternoon? That doesn't make any sense. So it's okay. So make Havdalah the next day, mincha time. And then before you start rinsing the vegetables for Motzei Yom Kippur, say Havdalah. Says more, listen. What after all you're going to say? Marashach, Kos ain't kan. You have no wine. Ner ain't kan. You can't light a candle. But Mel Madu, I didn't want to make Havdalah. So Rabbi Avun b'tfilah. I'll tell you what. May say Atochan Antanu. The bottom line is it never happens. Yom Kippur never follows Shabbos. But hypothetically, the Yerushalmi is saying that there would be a reason to make Havdalah in order to distinguish between the times when you're allowed to make prepare fruits and vegetables on Yom Kippur and the day before on Shabbos when you are not allowed to prepare them. Yeah. Right. Maybe they didn't make them Samim in the old days. Because the Yerushalmi doesn't ask on that. It's a good point. They're briskers. They didn't make the bracha on Samim on Tzai Shabbos. Okay. Says Adjulach Perkei Lukshar. Kol Kisvei HaKodesh Matzino Samim Ne'ad Leika. Any holy writ was allowed to save on Shabbos because of a fire. Was allowed to take them out into a mobli, which doesn't have an eruv. Whether they have the type one is allowed to read on Shabbos. Whether the type one is not allowed to read on Shabbos. Even though they're written in any language other than Hebrew, and also even though they're written in any language, too in Gniza, when that's put them in Shemus. If they're no good anymore. Mivnei Mayin Korban, why are you not allowed to read them on Shabbos? Mivnei Bittul Beis HaMedrash. So you're allowed to read them on Shabbos. People will not come to learn Torah because they go home and they listen, they read their art scroll Daniel and their art scroll Yechezkel, well, Ksuvim, only Ksuvim is also. Their art scroll Divrei Yomi and they never come to learn Torah. Okay, Mao Ben Korban Ben Sher Korban. Now initially, more understood that whether you're allowed to read them or not doesn't have to do with Shabbos, but in general. So it says, what's the difference between what you're allowed to read and what you're not allowed to read? Ben sheyesh ben toyos, ben she'en ben toyos. If it has too many mistakes, you're not allowed to read in it. But still, you're allowed to save it on Shabbos. That's what it means. Korban means you're allowed to read it because it has less mistakes. Ein Korban means not allowed to read it because they have too many mistakes. You can save both on Shabbos. Says Gemara, I don't understand. Oh no, it's not. I don't understand. Sorry, it's a raya. Sorry, apologize. Korban says b'nikusa. But Tanya, didn't we learn Sefer sheyesh bo shtayim v'sholosh toyos b'chol daf adaf? And this is a raya that you're allowed even a book which has 2 or 3 mistakes in each and every column, mitakta of a korban, you're allowed to fix it and you're allowed to read it. Arba ein korban, one which has 4 mistakes in every column, you're not allowed to read it. But anyway, it's still called a sefer and you're allowed to save it. Says the Gemara, because it says in our Mishnah that the reason you're not allowed to read them is because of Bittul Beis Medrash. Hadar Mara, this teaches us Bein Torah L'Neviim, Kitzvei HaKodesh. That which is between. I'm going to learn this like the Mashbiach. Nobody understands what's flying here, what the Gemara is talking about, but the Mashbiach says the Pshat. It's like this. Lieberman has another Pshat, but I'm not. It's Mashbiach, so I think it's better. Between Nevi'im and between the portions of Tanakh in the scroll, when you made a whole Tanakh together, you'd have a blank column. Are you allowed to save that blank column? Does that blank column have Kedusha? You save it. Okay? The words, obviously you save. Question, let's say the words are all gone. All you have is a blank column. Can you save that blank column on Shabbos or Yom Tov? Okay? The book is burnt up besides for that. Can you save that blank column? Says where? No. Since it says says, what are you allowed to save? The stuff which you're not allowed to read on Shabbos, even the stuff you're not allowed to read on Shabbos, because Mevalta Beis Medrash you're allowed to save. That means at least stuff which you could theoretically read. Hadar Maraz teaches, however, Bain, that which is between Torah and Nevi'im, L'Kisvei HaKodesh, between the two various different sections, the Torah and Nevi'im and Kisvei HaKodesh, and now to save that because of a fire. Why? Because it's not something you can read. Only something you can read you can save. So you could read, you could save, even if on Shabbos, for technical reasons, Chazal didn't allow you to read it. But it's got to be something which is readable, as opposed to blank space.
Could it have Kedusha originally?
No, look. And this is based on Machlokas. When you touch that blank part, it's in Matami your hands. We know if you touch the actual part of the Sefer Torah, which is significant, it's certainly Matami your hands. The Machlokas is when you touch the empty spaces in Matami your hands. Holds that it's Matami your hands. Matzil Sovinet Lake holds you can save it from a fire because it has Kedusha. There's a people which holds that if you touch the blank, it's not Matami your hands. So he holds Emasino Sovinet Lake. You can hardly save it from a fire. Hey Sivun, so he has the catch like this. Is that true? Is that consistent? If you wrote the Hebrew text in Aramaic or any other language, it doesn't make it in stomach. If you touch a translated Chumash, even if it's handwritten, it's not matami your hands, right? Because it's not the Kedusha of Hebrew. So if that's the case, then nonetheless we see Matziro Somin Le'adleika, you could save it from a fire. So too should say the same thing about the empty space between the Sforim. That even though it's not matami in the hands, you should be allowed to save it from a fire, right? Says the Gemara, Min mad tzninan, for that which you learned, Afal Pi Shksumi Cholosh Tunik Nisa. The reason is because we find in the Mishnah that even though they're written in any language, they must be put in Gniza. That's the reason why you say from Dleika, because it has writing on it, and the writing has to be put in Gniza. But stuff which has no writing in it, technically speaking, I don't know if it requires Gniza or not. I'm assuming it does not. But the bottom line is, since it says that explicitly in Mishnah that which is written b'chol lashon requires Gniza and is saved, means something which is not written at all, that's not saved at all. Okay? So the maskana is that which is between the Sforim, if the whole Sefer is burnt up already anyway, it's for following. All you have is the Gvil, the empty parchment. You don't save the blank parchment on Shabbos. Okay? Only stuff which has stuff written on it. What? We don't know. It's machlokas. No, even if it's not matami daim, it could be you would save it. Right? That's what Yerushalmi said. Because in English Sforim you could save even though not matami daim. We don't know. We never resolved whether this is matami daim or not.
Now, what if it originally was not blank, and now it is because all the ksam?
The Bavli actually asked that question. I think the Bavli says you do save it if it was originally written, then got.
That's what I meant by the Kedusha.
The Bavli asked if it got erased. If it was originally written on, then it got erased. I think the Bavli says that as Kedusha and it's saved under those circumstances. Yeah. Kisvei. What? Where? Bain Toravim L'Kisvei HaKodesh. Kisvei HaKodesh means Ksuvim. Kisvei HaKodesh means Ksuvim. Okay? Now, says one of my sister Rebbe Shimon, our Mishnah Rebbe Shimon. So Rebbe Shimon ain't Davar Shu Mishum Shvus the Rabbanon does not stand in front of Holy Writ. You save Holy Writ even if it means transgressing the Rabbanon. Says where? Now, the truth is, it's referring to somewhere else later in Masechta Shabbos. It's a case where you have a Sefer Torah, which you open, you're a klutz factor. You open a Sefer Torah on the roof, and part of the scroll rolled down. Now it's dangling down in a carmelis. Right. We haven't had, I don't know if we had it this cycle yet. I think it's an Erevin Gemara, not a Shabbos Gemara. Maybe it is a Shabbos Gemara. No, it's Erevin, Sadi Vav. Yeah, it's an Erevin Gemara. See, it says inside Erevin, Sadi Vav. So it's Erevin, so it's dangling down. It's dangling down, so you're allowed, so it's machlokas. Rabbanan Rabbi Shimon is allowed to roll back up. Rabbanan say leave it there till after Shabbos. Turn it upside down and leave it there. Rabbi Shimon says you're allowed to roll back up. So Lichora says on Gemara, our mission is going like Rabbi Shimon. It's like Rabbanan. You just leave it there, right? So Gemara must like Rabbi Shimon. It says no. Tam and they be zoyna. There, if the question be zoyna, so you just leave it there but turn it upside down. So Baramhacha kol hamomadiye, but here even Rabbanan agrees Shmatzil something they had lake on that because of a fire you save it. What's there? It's just a question be zoyel, so they weren't matir to Rabbanan. They said turn it upside down and leave it there. But here, if you're going to leave it there, it's going to get burnt to a crisp. So here, even Rabbanan agree allowed to save from a fire on Shabbos. Okay? Lemini tzchol Rashim Gamliel. Who's our mission going to say Chiddush like Rashim Gamliel? What does that mean? Abba got the Rashim Gamliel. This is a new case. It's a new thing. Abba got Rashim Gamliel. Omar. Abba's friend Leitir Shikos Feli Yavanish. Shimon says no art scrolls allowed. There's only one language you could translate the Torah into. What's that language? Greek, right? He could see to allow to save them from a fire. And in this context, Yerushalmi brings down a Maisa, which in the Bavli I think is brought down detached. But here it's brought down as a proof for this principle. Maisa and Gamliel Shoyaimin al Binyan Bahar Bayis. So Maisa and Gamliel standing on a structure in the Har Bayis in Temple Mount. Ve'ivilo Sefer Eov. Oh, it's not a raya here either. No, it's not right. It's independent. They brought him Eov written in Aramaic. He said to the builder, put it in Geniza under one of the steps in the Beis HaMikdash. So that's Lashita, so that you can only write Kisvei HaKodesh in Greek, not in any other language. Even Aramaic he didn't allow. Obviously, Yonis ben Uziel argues around Gamliel, because Yonis ben Uziel translated Nach into Aramaic. Where Rishon Gamliel, they can only be translated to Greek.
The subject of Tishba Kinas mentions a reference to some of the students of Shimon have Greek books or something.
There is? You got to find that for us. You have to find it. I don't know about it, and you have to find it. Now, as halacha, you can't read Kisvei HaKodesh Ksuvim only from Mincha and above. After the drush of the Rav is over. After the drush of the Rav is over, then you're allowed to learn them, because no Bittul Beis HaMedrash anymore. But nevertheless, I was showing him even before Mincha, one is allowed to learn Gemara, which pertains to Ksuvim, and Dash in the Ksuvim. And Tzarech Dover Noitu, but if you have to check up for reference, you'll have to take one off the shelf and check it up. Vilna, and we have a Maisa, fascinating Maisa. Rabbi Chia and Rav Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yasi. Rabbi Chia Rava, Rabbi Chia the Great, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yasi. They were sitting. Who posted Megillas Kinos, and they were learning Megillas Kinos Eicha. Erev Tishbav Shchayos b'Shabbos and Erev Tishbav on Shabbos. Mina Mincha Malav after Mincha, like this year. V'shir Ba'al Beis Echad. They didn't complete the whole sefer. They learned that besides the last olive base, there are a whole bunch of series of olive bases there, and they left except for the last one. They said, L'machar, should be L'machar, tomorrow to Bayin Koyim Milsa. We'll finish it tomorrow, on Tishba. Im Kshoya Nifta L'Beso, as Rebbe was walking home, Nichshal Betzbo, he stubbed his toe. The Koral Gamein, he said to himself, Rabbi Mach'oivim L'Shrasha, many pains befall an evil person. Said to him, you are our nasi and your suffering is for our sins. Right? You'll see Ruach Hapeinu Mashiach Hashem, the breath of our nose, the anointed of God, Nilka B'Shchisoisan. He got trapped in their corruption. Because we know the Gedolim of the generation are punished for the sins of the generation. If we would not have learned this, we should have said this. Now certainly that we learned this, and it's the last albeit they learned, because they stopped at Eicha Dalet. They didn't learn Eicha Hey. So since that's the last thing they learned, so for sure it was relevant to this episode, and it must be that the Rebbe was suffering not for his own averes in this case, but for the Averis of the generations. Vola Beso. Now, after we finish with the Agata part, there's halacha to be learned from this Maisa. What did Rebbe do? He went home. The Nasal of Svog Yov, she put on a dry sponge. The Kashla gave Mechutz and wrapped it with some string on the outside. We learned 3 things. Svog Einam Arape Elam Mishamer. A sponge doesn't heal, it just preserves. And that says no Isser Refuah on Shabbos using sponge. And Gemishu Mina Mucha. And also that the string is considered to be prepared before Shabbos, even though it isn't specifically prepared, it's assumed that it's prepared. And the last thing which they learned is Ve'ei Korim B'Kisvei HaKodesh Elam Min HaMincha L'Ma'ala. Since they are reading it after Mincha, it must be that they didn't have enough time to finish it that day. They said we have to leave 1 hour base till tomorrow. So it must be they weren't allowed to learn it earlier. Why would they weren't allowed to learn earlier? Because you can only start ksuvim such as eicha from after mincha. Me'ata asmar me'ata mokum sheish beis medrash ayikro. It's the case of the Rav is dashing. They shouldn't read it. Mokum shein beis medrash yikro. If there's no Rav in the city dashing, they should be allowed to. Should be allowed to read Kitzvei HaKodesh even before Mincha. Why are they not allowed to read Kitzvei HaKodesh even before Mincha? Before Mincha in a place even where there is no Rav? So we'll find that out tomorrow.